You know that weird feeling when you were exhausted at the end of the day, but deep down you know you did not do what really mattered? It is not because you are broken or lazy. It is because your brain was trained for years to chase quick dopamine instead of deep results. In How to Overcome Your Procrastination, a different perspective will show you that procrastination is not a personality trait, but a habit you can reprogram with emotional control, discipline, and a new identity. As you discover how neuroscience, focus, and simple daily choices can work in your favor, you will stop begging for motivation and start building consistency almost on autopilot. And the best part is, the same mind that once used procrastination to protect you will become your greatest tool to create productivity, entrepreneurship opportunities, and the self-confidence you always wanted. Procrastination, for this mentor, is not just being lazy. It is often an emotional anesthesia that people use when they feel fear, shame, or a deep sense of not being enough. Instead of facing the task that could expose their vulnerability, they run to quick hits of dopamine like social media, snacks, or random videos, calling it just a break when in reality, it is an escape. In entrepreneurship and everyday life, this habit quietly kills productivity, discipline, and long-term results, while the person still says they just lack motivation. Deep down, procrastination becomes a clumsy way to control emotions, not time. And that is exactly where emotional control and self-confidence start to be reprogrammed, not with another planner, but with a new way of looking at the pain they are avoiding. Imagine someone who needs to send an important email that could change their career, but instead they start organizing files, cleaning the desk, or answering messages that could easily wait. On the surface, it looks like productivity, but it is just fear of failure wearing a very tidy costume. The brain learns that every time it dodges discomfort, it gets instant relief and a shot of dopamine. So procrastination feels strangely rewarding in the short term. Over time, this pattern quietly rewires focus and concentration away from what matters most, sabotaging consistency and discipline. The person starts believing they lack talent, when in truth their brain has simply become very good at running away. There's also that classic scene. Someone sits down to study, launch a project, or record the first video for a new channel, and in seconds they're scrolling, checking notifications, or just watching one motivational quote video that turns into an hour. In reality, their brain is trying to protect them from possible criticism, rejection, or the haunting idea of what if I'm not good enough? So procrastination acts like an emotional shield. The funny thing is this shield also blocks the results, money, and freedom they say they want, especially in entrepreneurship. When they begin to name the emotion behind each escape, they open space to reprogram the brain and use neuroscience in their favor. And once this awareness appears, the next natural question is not, how do I get motivated? But, how do I gently train my mind to stop running every time discomfort knocks on the door? When someone procrastinates, the brain is not just failing. It is actually learning a pattern that feels safe and comfortable in the moment. Every time a person avoids a task that demands focus or emotional control, the brain receives a quick reward in the form of relief and dopamine, and it silently takes note. Escaping feels good. Let's do this again. This is neuroplasticity working against their goals, training circuits of procrastination instead of discipline, consistency, and productivity. In entrepreneurship, this becomes especially dangerous because results depend on actions that rarely feel comfortable at first. Without noticing, the person builds a mental habit of postponing anything that could grow their self-confidence and impact. A simple way to visualize this brain process is to imagine a path in a forest that gets wider every time someone walks through it. The more a person chooses distraction over action, the more that escape path becomes the default route for their thoughts. Soon, opening social media, checking messages, or chasing motivational quotes feels automatic whenever fear of failure appears. The brain loves what is familiar, not what is best, so it keeps choosing the same shortcut to temporary relief. Meanwhile, the path of courage, focus, and discipline stays narrow, full of leaves, because it is used less often. The powerful news is that this same brain science can be used to reprogram the mind in the opposite direction, step by step. Each time the person chooses to start, even for 5 minutes, they open a new neural trail of action and emotional control. It may feel awkward at first, but with repetition, this action path becomes easier to access, supporting self-confidence, motivation, and real results. Slowly, procrastination loses its strength because the brain discovers that facing discomfort can also bring dopamine, progress, and pride. And once someone realizes that their mind is trainable like this, the desire naturally arises to learn small, practical ways to expose themselves to discomfort without running away. A wise mentor would say that the secret is not to kill procrastination in one heroic day, but to train the brain with tiny, strategic acts of courage. Instead of waiting for a huge wave of motivation to appear, the person learns to act for just 5 minutes, even while feeling afraid, and let discipline do the heavy lifting. These micro-actions send a clear message to the brain. We can feel discomfort and still move. Little by little, emotional control grows and self-confidence stops, depending on perfect conditions to show up. It feels simple, almost too simple, but that is exactly why it works so well. Mini exposure looks like this. Start the project by writing only the first sentence, send just one difficult email, or make that first uncomfortable call you have been avoiding. The goal is not to finish everything at once, but to show your brain that focus and concentration can coexist with the fear of failure. Each small victory creates a new association between discomfort and positive dopamine. I acted, and now I feel proud. With time, procrastination loses its glamour because the person experiences that action, not escape, brings the results they want. Even entrepreneurship starts to look less like chaos and more like a sequence of small, doable steps. This idea is deeply aligned with brain science and exposure therapy. When someone faces a fear in small doses, the nervous system learns that the threat is not as fatal as it imagines. By recording the first video, launching the first offer, and sharing the first idea publicly, a person enables new neural pathways of discipline and productivity. The mind begins to trust that it can handle discomfort without exploding, and that reprograms the whole identity over time. Motivation then leaves the pedestal and becomes a bonus, not a requirement. And when a person discovers that many acts of courage actually work, they naturally begin to wonder how to differentiate genuine rest from mere escape disguised as an innocent break. There is a huge difference between real rest and pure escapism, even though the brain often tries to sell them as the same thing. True rest recharges. Good sleep, a quiet walk, breathing deeply, or a short break without a screen help the brain restore focus, discipline, and emotional control. Escapism, on the other hand, is that just 5 minutes of endless scrolling, random videos, and constant dopamine snacks that leave the mind even more tired. The person thinks they are boosting motivation and productivity, but they are actually draining their energy. No wonder consistency and results start to feel like something only more disciplined people can have. Many people call escapism rest because it looks relaxing on the surface. They say they're just checking something quickly on social media, but suddenly an hour is gone, and fear of failure is even stronger because nothing important was done. The brain gets used to this fast dopamine and begins to reject any activity that seems slower or more demanding, like studying, building a business, or planning a new project. Little by little, procrastination gains more power, while self-confidence sinks quietly. The person ends the day feeling more anxious, guilty, and confused about why motivation never lasts. A wise mentor would invite this person to become radically honest about the way they rest. Is that pause really restoring focus and concentration, or is it just an elegant way to run away from discomfort? Swapping a bit of escapism for intentional rest changes the entire chemistry of the day. Better sleep, more emotional control, more discipline, and a clearer mind for entrepreneurship and creative work. This does not mean living like a robot, but choosing what truly recharges instead of what only numbs. And it is precisely when a person begins to see this cycle more clearly that they perceive an even deeper pattern: the silent dance between guilt, procrastination, and self-sabotage. There is a silent spiral that catches many people. They procrastinate, feel guilty, beat themselves up, feel even worse, and then procrastinate more to escape that pain. In this loop, the brain links action with suffering and escape with relief, feeding a dangerous addiction to short-term dopamine. The person promises to change on Monday, seeks more motivational quotes, but keeps postponing what really matters. Each broken promise weakens self-confidence and the sense of identity, especially in entrepreneurship and big life projects. Deep down, they begin to believe they're the problem, when, in reality, it is the cycle that is well trained. A wise mentor would not ask this person to be stronger, but to observe themselves without cruelty, like a scientist watching an experiment. Instead of thinking, "I am a failure," they learn to think, "I am noticing a pattern of procrastination when fear of failure or shame appears." This simple shift reduces emotional pressure and opens space for discipline and emotional control to grow. The focus moves from drama to data. What exactly triggered the escape? What could be done for just 5 minutes next time? With this attitude, the mind becomes an ally, not a cruel judge. To break this cycle, the person starts to celebrate small wins and to reframe the idea of lost day. If they wasted the morning, they do not declare the day dead. They restart in the afternoon with one tiny, clear action, rebuilding consistency one brick at a time. This reharmonizes brain science with real life. The mind begins to associate action with results, pride, and healthier dopamine, not only with pressure. Productivity becomes more about quick recovery than about perfection. And when this new attitude begins to take hold, a natural question arises. If my environment normalizes procrastination, is it helping me or reinforcing everything I'm trying to change? Sometimes the biggest enemy of discipline is not inside the person's mind, but sitting right next to them on the couch, saying, "Relax, leave it for later." Friends, family, and colleagues often normalize procrastination with jokes and phrases that sound harmless, but quietly kill consistency and productivity. In this climate, entrepreneurship, studies, or any big project start to sound exaggerated, while escapism becomes an acceptable default. The brain, wanting to belong, adjusts emotional control and choices to fit the group. Without noticing, the person trades long-term results for short-term approval. A wise mentor would explain that every environment has its own hidden motivational quotes, even if nobody speaks them out loud. In some circles, the rule is work now, celebrate later. In others, it is celebrate always, work if you have time. When someone surrounded by procrastination tries to create new habits, the group may laugh, criticize, or gently sabotage, offering constant distractions. This social pressure makes discipline and focus feel almost like a betrayal of the tribe. The person then begins to feel strange for wanting to get organized, study more, or take care of their mental and financial health. That is why creating packs of action with people who also want to grow is such a powerful strategy. Instead of only chatting with those who reinforce postponement, the person intentionally builds a small circle that values consistency, emotional control, and real results. It could be a friend who's up for studying together, someone who's starting a business, or an accountability partner who sends quick progress updates. This changes the social dopamine. Now, the brain receives reward for action, not just for escape. And when the environment starts to work in my favor, a new reflection arises. If even my circle influences my behavior, how is the identity I assume silently guiding everything I do or fail to do? One of the smartest shifts a person can make is to stop saying, "I am a procrastinator," and start saying, "I am in the process of changing how I act." When someone defines themselves as a procrastinator, the brain treats procrastination as part of their identity, not just a habit. That identity quietly sabotages discipline, consistency, and self-confidence because the mind tries to stay congruent with who it believes it is. In entrepreneurship and big life goals, this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I am this way, why even try? The label becomes a cage decorated with motivational quotes that never turn into action. A wise mentor would show that the brain tends to act in line with the story it repeats about itself. If the inner narrative is, "I never finish anything," the mind will unconsciously look for proofs to keep that phrase true. But if the person starts to say, "I am someone learning emotional control and discipline," even when fear of failure appears, the brain gains a new map. This is not fantasy. It is brain science. Attention, focus, and behavior follow the identity template. Little by little, micro-actions begin to match this new story, and real results appear. Practical identity shifts sound like this. I'm someone who honors small promises to myself. I am someone who chooses one important task before the distractions. I am someone reprogramming my brain to act with courage. These phrases may seem simple, but they change the emotional climate inside the mind. Motivation stops being a fireworks show and becomes a quiet, steady fire fed by daily choices. The person then realizes that they don't need to be born disciplined. They can become that kind of person. And when this new identity begins to take hold, the next question arises almost on its own. Okay, if I already know who I want to be, how do I make the beginning of each task so easy that my brain no longer has excuses to run away? A wise mentor would smile and say, "Your brain is not afraid of work. It is afraid of mountains with no trail." When the task is labeled study for the exam, launch a business, or change my life, the mind sees a giant, foggy monster and naturally runs to procrastination. The trick is to slice this monster into microscopes. Instead of study, it becomes open the PDF and read one page. Instead of launch a channel, it becomes write 3 video ideas. This makes discipline and consistency feel lighter, almost playful. The first step stops demanding motivation and starts depending only on a little emotional control. From the point of view of brain science, starting small activates the Zeigarnik effect. Once the mind begins something, it has a natural tendency to want to continue. So that just 5 minutes of focused work on a tiny part of the task often turns into 20 or 30 minutes without much effort. Dopamine starts to be linked to progress, not only to distraction, and this rewires the circuits that use to feed procrastination. For entrepreneurship and studies, this becomes a secret weapon. The person no longer negotiates with the entire project, only with the next tiny, absurdly easy step. Results grow as a side effect of many small beginnings. Microscopes turn focus and concentration into something accessible even on bad days. If the person is tired, they can still write one paragraph, send one important message, or organize just one part of a plan. Each micro-win reinforces self-confidence and proves that they are capable of action, even without feeling 100% motivated. Over time, this pattern of ridiculously easy start becomes automatic, and the brain stops dramatizing the beginning of tasks. And when the beginning stops being a nightmare, it becomes much clearer that, without a minimally adjusted lifestyle, not even the best mental method can sustain this new pace of productivity. A wise mentor would remind this person that no mindset hack can compensate for a body living permanently in survival mode. Lack of sleep, excess caffeine and sugar, sedentary lifestyle, and screens late at night sabotage emotional control and drain the energy needed for discipline and focus. In this state, the brain naturally chooses the fastest dopamine: procrastination, escapism, and endless distraction. The person starts believing they lack willpower or motivation, when in fact their nervous system is just exhausted. Entrepreneurship, studies, and long-term projects then seem heavier than they really are. Small lifestyle adjustments can radically change this internal scenario. Going to bed a little earlier, reducing nighttime screens, drinking more water, and moving the body, even through short walks, improve concentration and productivity. Blood sugar becomes more stable, which reduces mood swings and that constant sensation of, "I can't handle anything." With more rested neurons, it becomes much easier to apply techniques like microscopes and mini exposure to discomfort. The brain receives the message. Now we have fuel, it is safe to act. Thinking like this, the person stops seeing procrastination as only a moral or character failure and starts viewing it as a whole system signal. If every task feels like climbing a mountain with a backpack full of bricks, maybe some of those bricks are poor sleep, bad diet, and constant overstimulation. Adjusting these factors increases self-confidence because the person finally experiences themselves as someone capable of consistent action. Motivation and results become byproducts of a more coherent life, not isolated miracles. And when routine begins to support this new discipline, the desire naturally arises to connect each task to something bigger, a purpose that makes the effort not only possible, but profoundly meaningful. A wise mentor would say that tasks disconnected from a deeper why will always lose the fight to the couch and endless scrolling. When a person sees a task only as boring work, the brain naturally compares it with instant dopamine from distractions and chooses the easier reward. But when that same task is linked to financial freedom, a better life for the family, a new level in entrepreneurship, or a dream project, everything changes in weight. Discipline and consistency stop sounding like punishment and start sounding like tools to build something meaningful. Emotional control becomes less about holding on and more about honoring mission. Turning tasks into a mission begins with honest questions. What does this action unlock for my future? Who benefits if I show up with focus today? What results am I building, brick by brick? Studying for an exam becomes buying time and options for the next years. Recording a video is no longer just content. It becomes a bridge between someone's pain and a solution, between your knowledge and another person's transformation. In this light, procrastination stops being just a time issue and becomes a values issue. Am I really willing to delay the life I say I want? Brain science supports this. When a mind connects effort to a clear and emotionally powerful future, dopamine is released not only at the end, but along the path. The brain starts to enjoy progress itself, not just the final prize, which increases motivation and productivity in the day-to-day. Self-confidence grows because each disciplined act says, in silence, I can trust myself to move in the direction that matters. The person begins to live less for micro-escapes and more for macro-purpose. And when that purpose starts to guide their schedule and choices, everything they've learned about procrastination ceases to be theory and becomes a practical roadmap for a new way of living, working, and building consistent results. Every change you want in your life starts the moment you stop treating procrastination as just the way you are and begin using everything you learned here as a daily practice. What is the first small action you can take today to prove to yourself that you are someone who honors your word, even when fear, tiredness, or distractions try to take control? How would your entrepreneurship journey, your studies, or your creative projects look 6 months from now if you simply applied these tools with consistency, emotional control, and focus instead of waiting for perfect motivation to appear out of nowhere? And most importantly, which old story about, I'm not capable, are you willing to retire so you can finally build the results and self-confidence you deserve? If this content helped you reprogram your brain, even a little, do not keep it only for today. Save this video, come back to it whenever you feel yourself slipping into procrastination again, and share it with someone who also needs this wake-up call. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you can continue learning how to master your mind, increase your productivity, and build the disciplined, powerful version of yourself that your future depends on.